Synth TV. Hey everybody, CatSynth TV! And this is part 2 of our detailed look at the ARP 2600V from Arturia. In this video, we'll be going over many of the advanced features such as the sequencer, the tracking generator, and external input. If you haven't yet seen part 1, we recommend checking that out first. Link is in the upper right. And as always, please do subscribe to this channel for more synthesizer content coming out regularly. And please do consider supporting us via Patreon or Ko-Fi. Links in the description below. In part 1, we explored the 3 main VCOs, but there are additional functions for ring modulation and external sound generation which can be found in this module to the left. The ring modulator multiplies 2 signals together. By default, it uses VCOs 1 and 2. Let's turn it up in the VCF now. Different levels of the ring mod and frequencies of the source material have a dramatic effect on the sound. One trick is to use pulse width modulation on VCO2 and see what happens. We can of course patch in any sounds, such as the sawtooth wave from VCO3. And we can also route it anywhere, such as to the frequency modulation of VCO2. Now we can also bring in external sounds via the preamp function. Routing an external source into the 2600V depends on which DAW you are using. The external input works particularly well with drum sources, so let's go to Ableton Live and set up a drum loop. We got this groovy little 11/8 drum loop going. In Ableton Live 10, we open up the ARP 2600V track and set up a sidechain from our drum track. We then go to our drum track and route it to the sidechain. Now back in the 2600V, we can adjust the Preamp and Envelope Follower slider until we see the red LED like before. Let's route it to the filter again. Now we can also use the drums to control the filter frequency via the envelope follower. This tracks the amplitude of the incoming signal and outputs it as a control voltage. Let's route the envelope follower to the control input of the VCF. There, we are now tracking the drums with the filter. Let's turn down the direct preamp into the filter and turn up VCO2. Now the drums are modulating the filter on VCO2. We can even have a bit more fun by routing the preamp to the ring modulator with VCO2 and opening up the normal ring modulator channel in the VCF. Okay, now we're going to go back and open up one of those secret compartments we mentioned in part 1 to reveal the tracking generators. This is a brand new feature that was not part of the original ARP 2600. Essentially, a tracking generator is a function that can be edited in real time. If we click on the screen, it brings up this drawing interface where we can draw a separate function for each of the 4 generators. I'm just going to draw freehand right now, but there are also lines and curves that you can use. Now that we have our function, we can leave the editor and go back to the main panel. Since we drew on generator 1, let's connect its output to a frequency modulation input of VCO2. We can hear the pitch change with the shape of the generator. We can use this frequency control on the left side to speed up the generator. As we get into higher frequencies, we get some crazy complex FM going. Let's slow it back down. We can use the smoothing control on the right side to smooth out the function. This works particularly well as we get into FM ranges. Of course, we can use multiple generators at once. Let's draw a function for generator 3 and attach it to the pulse wave modulation. Let's turn off the FM for a moment and dial that in. Again, smoothing it out a bit. Now let's bring the FM back in. We have a really complex timbre that will be difficult to produce with just the traditional oscillator waveforms alone. Now the tracking generators can be applied to the input signals as well. Let's reset things back to the default and bring up VCO2's square wave. Let's draw a sort of descending tracking generator. There we go, nice. Now let's take the sawtooth of VCO1 and attach it to the input of generator 1. Let's also put VCO1 in low frequency mode. We see that the generator sorta jumps around as the sawtooth wave of VCO1 hits its discontinuity. Changing the frequencies of VCO1 and the function generator create all sorts of interesting effects, with the generator sometimes appearing to move backwards. Okay, and now we turn our attention to the infamous sequencer. This is actually a recreation of the powerful 1601 step sequencer that ARP produced in the 1970s. It is quite a complex instrument in its own right, with 16 CV steps, 3 independent gate buses, and a myriad of inputs and outputs for the gates, CVs, and control functions. But as we have done with all the rest of the 2600V, we'll break it all down for you. Let's start simple by setting up a 16-step pitch sequence that starts and stops when you press the keyboard. First, we'll set up a simple patch with a VCO2 square wave and envelope controlled VCF. We can adjust the CV sliders for the 16 steps of the sequencer to create a pattern of pitches. To use the raw CV values to control the pitch of VCO2, we connect the left sequencer out to the frequency control. We can start and stop the sequencer with this button. Now if we want to have the sequencer play standard semitone pitches, we disconnect the raw sequencer output and instead use quantized out A. The quantized pitches are relative to whatever key I am playing, so as I play different keys, the pitch of the sequence shifts up and down. To control the tempo of the sequencer, we can adjust the clock frequency. Right now it is synchronized to the tempo of the DAW or MIDI clock. We can switch off MIDI sync for manual control of the tempo. Let's switch MIDI sync back on. Now I have been starting and stopping the sequencer manually. We can have it start and stop when we play a key by going to the envelope module and connecting the gate to the start-stop input on the sequencer. And in order to make it start from the beginning each time, we connect the trigger to the reset control. Now we can play the sequencer from the keyboard. You may have noticed that the filter envelope stays open the entire time I have a key down, no matter how many notes the sequencer plays. But suppose instead we want each sequencer step to trigger the filter envelope. We connect the sequencer's clock output to the envelope's manual trigger. We can use the clock pulse width control to adjust the duration of the envelope, giving us more control over the articulation of the sound. Now the timing of sequencer steps are even by default, but we can use the FM control to add some variety. Let's connect the LFO to the clock FM. By adjusting the LFO frequency, we can get some interesting syncopation or swing effects. Yeah, that's kind of groovy. Okay, let's turn that off for now and look at the gate buses. Each step of the sequencer generates a gate signal in addition to the CV, and that gate can be routed to one of 3 buses for a variety of different behaviors. Right now, all steps are routed to gate bus 2, which is the default. We can switch a few steps to gate bus 1. Now initially this doesn't make much of a difference, but bus 1 is connected to the frequency modulation slider. With no FM input, we can use this slider to speed up the steps that are routed to bus 1. Let's set them to double the initial rate. You can hear that the bus 1 steps are now twice as fast as the others. We can create a variety of interesting rhythms this way. Let's now route a step or 2 to bus 3. Bus 3 is connected to the step or reset functions of the sequencer. When we switch it to reset, the sequencer will reset each time it hits a step routed to bus 3. We can also add another bus 3 step and get this even shorter pattern. Now if we also switch to random mode, we can get extra variety of patterns among the 3 buses with different speeds on bus 1 and resetting on bus 3. We can also output the gate buses individually. Let's connect bus 1 to a tracking generator and attach it to the frequency control. We now have a more complex filter pattern. Now we can route the CV from the sequencer to other parameters as well. Let's take output B and route it to the pulse width modulation of VCO2. We can also have a little fun by mixing the sequencer CV and the sample and hold using one of the voltage processors. We'll connect the sequencer to input B and the sample and hold to input A. And then we'll connect the output to the pulse width. We can use this slider to mix the 2 sources. And this knob controls the lag or smoothness of the mix signal. We hope you have enjoyed this look at some of the advanced features of the 2600V and have some ideas how you can use them in your own music. To find out more, please visit Arturia.com and check out the description below this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.